Yo guys, and welcome back to TRT, and today we have a special episode. We are outside, we are in Indianapolis, we're in America with Samantha Tan, a racing driver. Yeah.
Hi guys, my name is Samantha Tan. I'm a professional race car driver, team owner of Samantha Tan Racing, and global ambassador for BMW Motorsport. We are here at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, like you said, for the GT World Challenge finale, season finale, the Indianapolis 8-hour.
And this is the last race of the season, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's on the stakes here today?
There's a lot in the stakes here this weekend. So my teammate and I, Neil Verhagen, we're coming into this final race 33 points ahead in the championship, so we are leading, but this is a double points weekend, meaning the points up for grabs is about 50 for if you win. So our competitors still in the championship fight, but we don't have to be, I guess, like too much pressure. But there are 15 Pro-Am cars here this weekend, so it's going to be tough.
And being the final race of the season, I think most races aren't 8 hours long, are they?
No, so this is like the only endurance race we are doing this season. This is part of the IGTC as well. So it's a little bit of a bigger field here this weekend. Typically the races that we do in GT World Challenge America are about an hour and a half with one driver change. So it's just Neil and I, and at the halfway point, like the 45 to 55 minute window, there is a driver change, tire change, fueling, et cetera, et cetera. Here we have a 3-driver format, so we're joined by JCD here this weekend for the 8-hour.
Okay. So my main question for today is, what fish originally made you get into racing?
For sure. So how I got into racing was sparked by my father, who is a very big car enthusiast and racing fan. And although he never raced himself, he would bring me to like car meets and track days when I was a kid. And it wasn't until I was like 14 years old that I finally got to drive myself, and he enrolled me in these like performance driving schools to essentially get me to be a safe driver on the road. But at the end of one of these programs, I got to sit in one of my very first race cars. It was a Ferrari 458 Challenge, and I got taken out on a hot lap with a professional driver, and just the adrenaline, the like G-forces, I had the biggest smile on my face, and as soon as I got out of the car, I was hooked, and I was like, I think I want to try becoming a race car driver. So I started at the age of 16 in a 91 Civic doing regional races here in the US.
Oh, at 16, that's when you started at the beginning of the ladder.
Mm-hmm.
And how difficult was it for you to work your way up to where you are now?
It was definitely not an easy journey by any means. Like I said, started in that 91 Civic. I had no prior racing knowledge when I first started, like didn't come from a motorsport background or family, so really had to learn how to navigate the industry by myself. And definitely those first few years were really tough, just kind of learning racecraft and just how to position the car, like typical racing line, et cetera, et cetera. It wasn't until I think it was like 2019 when I started in GT4s and doing like these 2-driver formats that I really started to learn and become successful. My first championship title came in 2019. We won the team championship title, and then in 2021 we won 6 championship titles in an endurance series over in Europe. So it's been a rocky journey, but quite a steep learning curve, I would say, but we've come a very long way.
And what would you say was like your biggest challenge getting through to where you are now?
Oof. I think the biggest challenge for anyone in motorsport is the funding and finding sponsorship. So, I mean, even though I think women in motorsport were, growing and it's becoming better in the industry, it's still quite difficult for us to find sponsorship. So even to this day, I'd say that is my biggest challenge. And on top of that, not having a role model that looked like me when I first started in the industry. So when I was faced with like stereotypes or people assuming things about, my character or blaming things on my gender, for example, I never had anybody that I could use as a counter example to those. And so I think, as many people know, racing is a mental game. And so when I first started in the industry, like didn't know anything, like having these kind of like mental doubts, I would say not having a role model was also a really big challenge for me.
Okay, I understand. And like being a woman, has it made your journey considerably harder, a little bit harder, or was it just, would you say if you was a man, it would be the same?
I think it has been more difficult being a woman in the industry. Again, like for one example, like not having a role model that looked like me, facing misogynistic comments. I've had competitors try to invalidate my successes, tell me that, you know, when I went out to qualify and put on a good lap, that it wasn't even me in the car, that they had put my male teammate in the car and used my name. I've had people tell me that, oh, if like your teammate was in the car, not you, like we would have won the race. Like things like little comments like that. But I think it built this kind of resilience that I have today that has made me successful.
That's a journey and a half, to be honest. I think going on to my next topic, what is your favorite track out of all the tracks you've raced on?
Definitely Nürburgring is my all-time favorite track I've been to. There's no other place like it in the world. And just like the rhythm, like flying through the trees, it's an incredible track.
I mean, other than, I think the Nürburgring is a staple for a lot of people across the world. Car, like real racing drivers or just regular car guys like us and majority of my viewers. Other than the ones that we're able to experience, like the ring, what else is there?
Ooh, definitely Spa's up there for me in Europe. Here in the States, probably like VIR, Watkins Glen, Coda. Those are all like top 10 for me for sure.
I mean, two of those I actually haven't heard of.
Mm-hmm.
I think you said VIR.
VIR.
VIR?
Yeah.
Where's that?
It's in Virginia. It's in the middle of nowhere, but it's an incredible track. There's like these really, really fast S's where you're like pinned in a GT3 car like all the way up the hill. It's a lot of fun.
And in terms of like the cars itself, compared to like the street cars version, so I think you drive the M4, compared to the street version, how different is it?
Ooh, very, very different. So, but I raced both GT4 and GT3 with the M4 platform. The GT4, I would say, is more similar to a street car. There's less modifications to it, like less downforce. Still has like stock engines. The brakes are not like the GT3 brakes. They're not the greatest. It's like a modified street car, I would say the GT4 is like. The GT3, you have so much like technology that's been put into the car, like the 15-step traction control, for example, settings that you can change in the car, like on the fly, like I think 10 different ABS settings. You can change the brake bias on the fly as well. I think, yeah, the GT3 has a lot of downforce as well, so just a lot of things that are different and can play with.
I didn't take in the difference between a GT4 and a GT3 cars. I assumed they'll be very similar. I just thought maybe the GT3 would have been a bit more race.
I think the GT3 is a pure race car, and like I said, I think the GT4 is more of like a modified street car, kind of like your track car, if that makes sense. The brakes in the GT3, you get so much more feel out of the pedal. And then, yeah, just being able to throw the car in at such high speeds and really trust the downforce, I think was the biggest difference for me jumping from a GT4 to a GT3.
And how, like, as a driver, how does it go from like knowing a certain car and then going into a car that you have a lot more trust and faith in into the corners? Like, surely would that not upset your rhythm, or would you be slower?
It's difficult to adapt, I will say. So, for example, last year I had the opportunity to race both the 296 GT3, the Ferrari, and the M4 GT3 BMW. I'd raced the BMW in the US and the Ferrari in Europe, and having to jump between these two platforms, going from like a front engine car to a mid-engine car, for example, there was a bit of time that it took me to kind of remember the muscle memory and how each car kind of feels in a certain corner, for example, how it reacts. There definitely is like a little bit of time to adapt to that.
What is your favorite out of the two, the GT3s and the GT4s?
Out of everything, I feel the most at home in the M4 GT3. I know I'm a little bit biased, but it's also because I've had like so much seat time in the car. I really feel like I have a very good reading of it, and yeah, I feel very comfortable in that car. So.
And what was it like racing a Ferrari?
It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. It drives almost like a prototype, I would say. Like the amount of downforce that car generates is insane. And when you're kind of behind somebody, the aero wash you get, meaning like the lack of grip you get because you lose all the downforce, was insane in the Ferrari. But it was really, really cool. Ferrari is obviously like one of my favorite brands, so it was really cool to be able to race them.
Yeah, because obviously, like, as a kid, growing up, seeing Ferraris, like, well, that's the dream. So I'd assume like they are the next generation, next level to drive, like compared to the BMWs.
For me personally, it's always been a dream of mine to work with BMW, I would say. I've been very fortunate to be able to work with both manufacturers, but someone who, like, I got into racing because of BMW, I would say, and I got into cars because of BMW, so that's just always been my goal, and I truly feel like I'm living the dream.
So obviously, earlier on, I was speaking to another driver outside, and he was just telling us about the BOP, I think. So like making all the cars perform in a similar manner, because obviously cars being based on their stock form, the Ferrari is a lot more powerful than the BMW. So I was a bit confused on how they're in the same category or how they compete. And he said that they're detuned quite heavily.
Yeah, so every car has its strengths and weaknesses. We're actually the fastest in a straight line. We make the most power. So they limit us on that and try to add more weight to balance it out. But like you said, there's all these different manufacturers and different cars, so that the way that they try to balance it is either, by taking away power or adding weight to the car, adding in certain restrictors, for example.
Okay, so for example, you guys have the most power, but you have the most weight.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
And they take away, like, for example, they'll take away boost. They'll essentially post a different boost table per weekend, per track that we go to. That kind of limits how much power we make down the straights.
Well, what does that mean for you, like, and the competitors in terms of actual cornering and the races?
Yeah, and so since we're the heaviest, that means that, our tires degrade at a much higher rate than some of the other cars, but we're able to, I guess, make up some of that time down the straights. But I feel like they've really kind of figured out the BOP, that the field is quite tight. I would say like the top 15 are within a second. So it's pretty cool to see.
Within a second?
Yeah.
Wow, that's very small.
And it's all like, different manufacturers. I think the Porsches here this weekend are quite strong, I will say. But, I mean, it is what it is.
I mean, yeah, naturally Porsches, well, in the street, they are known to be like the most track focused. So, I mean, coming onto the track, it's good to see what they do compared to the rest. And I've seen a lot of AMG GTs.
The Mercedes is also a very strong car, yeah.
Who would you say is your biggest competitor for this weekend or the year in general?
This year, it's definitely been the other BMW, the number 29 BMW, who we're fighting with in the championship. And also another competitor who had to back out mid-season, unfortunately, which was a Mercedes AMG. Yeah, they're quite strong. So it's been a fun year. It's been a fun year for sure.
What has been your favorite race this year so far?
Definitely Coda has been my favorite race because F1 track, but also we won both races, so it was really cool to sweep the weekend.
You know what, guys, it's been Mo. We're here at Indianapolis. I can't even pronounce it properly, but we're at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It's been a great episode here. We're going to be here for the weekend, and hopefully we will be joining Samantha with their celebrations.
Thank you for listening to The Racing Talks. We'll see you next time.